Hey everyone, welcome to the Read Aloud for Introduction to Southern and Eastern African Geography. Alright, this one a little shorter than the previous one, shouldn't take us too long to get through, but feel free to listen along, follow along. I'll explain some of the maps and stuff as we go. Alright, let's go ahead and jump in. Introduction to Southern and Eastern African Geography. The continent of Africa is split into many different regions. The third and fourth regions we will be looking at are Southern and Eastern Africa. Southern and Eastern Africa consist of 20 different countries. Like with the previous reading, I'm going to go ahead and read these countries so you know how to pronounce them. All right? We have Botswana, Burundi, Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, Lesotho, Madagascar, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, Rwanda, Somalia, South Africa, Sudan, Swaziland, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. All right, and you can look at the map here and see where each of those countries is. And yes, this little tiny one is pronounced Djibouti. Okay, moving on. All right, so it's physical features and climate. Southern and Eastern Africa are home to a diverse and impressive physical features. From the huge desert of the Sahara to Africa's Great Lakes, this region has some of Earth's most breathtaking landscapes and wildlife. One of Southern and Eastern Africa's unique features is the Great Rift Valley. This is a long, unusually flat area of land between areas of higher ground in Eastern Africa. If you want to know, it's right here. Let me go ahead and circle that for you guys while I continue reading. Or I'll underline it. There. Okay. All right. It was formed when two plates moved away from each other. This movement caused the land in between them to sink and form a valley. The valley's sides rise steeply into mountains and high plateaus. Africa's highest point, Mount Kilimanjaro, sits along the Great Rift Valley. There are also large plains between the mountains. And let me see if I can find Mount Kilimanjaro. It is right here. Let me make a nice dot for you where that is. Okay, that's the highest point in Africa. There are also large plains between the mountain ridges. Near the Great Rift Valley lie a group of large and beautiful lakes. One of these, Lake Victoria, which can be found right here, is the largest lake in Africa. Africa's Great Lakes support plant, animal, and human life in areas around them. So do the large rivers that originate or start in this region. The Nile, Zambezi, the Orange, and the Limpopo are the largest. A spectacular waterfall called Victoria Falls is on the Zambezi River. We'll look at that link in just a second. Rivers serve as a transportation network, but the Sud swamps block movement between East Africa and Egypt in North Africa. Excuse me. In the Sud, floating mats of vegetation and tall papyrus reeds make it difficult for ships to pass. Parts of southern and eastern Africa are very dry. Deserts ring the region: the Sahara, Nubian, Kalahari, and Namib. The Namib Desert along the coast of Namibia has some of the world's tallest sand dunes. All right, let's take a look at this map here and kind of see what it's talking about. So there's deserts up here, there's deserts down here. Okay, deserts kind of surround all of this area, but there's also all these lakes and rivers and mountains in this region. Okay, it's a very diverse region. I mentioned Victoria Falls. I'm just going to go ahead and open up this link real quick if you can at home. It's just a video of Victoria Falls. Okay, it's absolutely gorgeous and it's massive. So we'll just watch about 30 seconds of this real quick. Scoot ahead here a little bit so that way you guys can see what the falls does kind of look like. So all this water is coming to them. Myself up here. Real quick, before I forget, I want to restart the video. So something you guys can do with this video is it is 3D, virtual reality in a way. You can actually scroll around and see the falls from different angles, all sorts of cool stuff. All right, let's keep going with our reading. We'll close this out. Put myself back down over here. All right, so that's Victoria Falls, but just an example of all the crazy, awesome things that are happening in this region of Africa. All right, let's go ahead and look at the climate. Like West and Central Africa, Southern and Eastern Africa lie on both sides of the equator. Okay, once again, I'll draw on that line real quick. If you guys look here at the map, here is that equator line, and it goes through Kenya, like that. Okay, this region also has the Sahara in the north, should sound like a theme now, and wetter regions near the equator. Wind patterns that cause seasonal rains in the West and Central Africa also affect this region. Okay, so it's got the wet and dry season. However, there is a major difference between the two regions. Many parts of southern and eastern Africa have a higher elevation or height, so they're higher up from the ocean, okay, than West and Central Africa. This means that areas near the equator are less hot and wet than similar areas in West and Central Africa. So because of this elevation, these highlands, they don't have the rainforest, okay, in the same way that West and Central Africa does. For example, even though Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Kenya are near the equator, they are so high that snow caps their peaks year-round. So let's go ahead and find those again real quick if we can. Maybe they're not on this map. Okay, well, you can look at the previous map and they're there. But they're so high up, even though they're in this area right here near the equator, that they still have snow year-round on their peaks. Southern and Eastern Africa have woodlands and forests on both sides of the equator. Gorilla, leopards, and many kinds of birds live in these areas. The savanna is one of the most important ecosystems in this region. Okay, oftentimes when you think of Africa with lions and wildebeest and stuff like that, you are thinking of this area of Africa. Savannas are flat, grass-covered plains with few trees. The most famous part of the savanna is the Serengeti Plain in Kenya and Tanzania. The Serengeti and other parts of the savanna are home to many animals. Large herds of elephants, lions, wildebeest, zebras, giraffes, gazelles, and other animals live on the plains. This wildlife shapes the way people see the region. Still, many Africans live in towns and cities and may never see one of these animals in the wild. Okay, that's kind of crazy to think about. Let's look at our map real quick. Okay, and our key. So basically, this is telling you what kind of climate is in each region. So these green areas are tropical or subtropical. So the island of Madagascar, along the coast here, some areas in Ethiopia where it's not totally mountains, things like that. You do have a little bit of that rainforest. Now, nowhere near as much as you did in the Congo and in Western and Central Africa, but you do have a little bit of it here. However, you have much more of this tropical or subtropical grassland or savanna. Look at all this yellow. All of this is that savanna. And like I said, when you think of like Lion King, okay, that kind of Africa is what we're talking about here. All those beasts and animals that you think about, okay? And then you have the Mediterranean brush, which is down here at the very bottom. It's very similar to like the coastline of northern Africa along the Mediterranean. Very similar climate. And then you do have some desert and desert brush. There's lots of desert in here, and there's a little bit in Madagascar. And then up here, okay, up here would be the Sahara. And then you do have some mountain grassland or brush. Okay, so if you look closely, this area here, there's some mountains, and down here, there's some mountains. Okay, so that's kind of what the climate of Eastern and Southern Africa looks like. Let's continue and learn a little bit about life in Southern and Eastern Africa. People and the land. Southern Africa has more mineral and ore resources than many other parts of the world. It also has some areas where farming is very, very productive. People use the land in this region to farm and raise animals. Farmlands can be found in most of the countries in the region, but there are many areas that are very dry. These places cannot rely on regular rainfall for crops. Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia, and Namibia, struggle to find enough water to grow their crops. Because so much of the region is dry, many farmers irrigate their land. Okay, irrigation, remember, is when they use their own water, they bring water in to water those crops. Okay, cotton, tobacco, and tea are grown in irrigated areas, which you guys can see kind of down here. People also raise cattle and other livestock in drier parts of the region. In some cases, animals are a threat to the herds. Herders must defend their animals at night. Some of the region has very fertile land. In South Africa and other countries, people grow many crops. They run large commercial farms or plantations. These farms grow crops such as sugarcane, cotton, avocados, and tropical fruit. They often export their crops, okay, meaning they sell them for money. Coffee is Ethiopia's most important export. In fact, the plant was probably first grown in Ethiopia's highlands. The word coffee may even come from the Kaffa region of Ethiopia, where the crop is grown. Challenges of the environment. So there are quite a few challenges because of this area. 1. Water. Water, who has it and who doesn't, is a huge challenge for countries in this region. Countries that have enough water resources have a better chance of feeding their people. Countries that do not have enough water struggle to support their people. Lack of water and good farming leads to famine or a shortage of food. Sudan and Ethiopia receive more food aid than many other countries in the world for this region. Okay, so if we look here, Sudan and Ethiopia, they're pretty dry places. The region's many rivers provide a valuable benefit to some countries. Dams have been built along major rivers to generate hydroelectricity. They also provide water for nearby farms. But these dams can cause conflict or war. For example, the Nile River flows through, Sudan and other countries before reaching Egypt. Dams built in Uganda take water away from Sudan. Who gets to decide how much water each country can take? Why don't you guys think about that? Let's look up here real quick, okay? So the Nile starts here in Lake Victoria and goes from Uganda through Sudan and then to Egypt, and another part of it starts in Ethiopia, okay? So if you look closely at this chart, we'll start down here at Uganda. Ugandans and others take 5.2 trillion gallons of water each year. Okay, that's how much water they're taking. Ethiopia gets 2.6 trillion. Sudan takes 3.1 trillion gallons of water. And Egypt takes 14 trillions of gallons of water each year. Now, if you think about this, how much water are Sudan, Ethiopia, and Uganda taking away from Egypt potentially? Well, let's do some quick math. 3.1, 2.6, up to 5.7, plus another 5.2, so 10.9, almost 11 trillion gallons of water are being taken out of this river before it ever even gets to Egypt. Okay, and that has caused some conflict at times between these countries because some countries believe they should have more water than others. Let's just say it that way. Okay? All right, let's keep going. Disease. I'm going to make that look a little nicer. There we go. As in West and Central Africa, disease causes many problems in Southern and Eastern Africa. Some diseases stem from the environment. Just as mosquitoes carry malaria, tsetse flies carry sleeping sickness. The flies live in many areas between the Sahara and the Kalahari Desert. These areas are known as the tsetse belt. The disease makes it impossible to raise cattle in the tsetse belt. Many people in Southern and Eastern Africa do not have access to clean water, and so they contract diseases carried by water. For example, cholera and river blindness have crippled and killed many Southern and Eastern Africans. Let's find this tsetse belt real quick. We're going to scroll back up here. Okay, so we have the desert all the way up here, and then let me see if I can find the Kalahari Desert. No, maybe it's not on this map. But you guys can look that up, and if you find that, let me know. Okay, it is on another map somewhere. I just forget where. Okay, but that would be the tsetse belt. All right, let's go ahead and move on to ethnic groups. There are many different groups of people in the region. Some ethnic groups live in a single country. Others stretch across borders. Few countries are made up of a single ethnic group. Some of the largest groups are the Zulu and the Hausa, who live in South Africa. the Kikuyu, in Kenya, and the Hutu and Tutsi in Rwanda. In the past, different ethnic groups lived different lifestyles. For example, the Maasai in Kenya and Tanzania herded cattle. The Baganda in Uganda farmed and lived in large villages. However, today many people in the region live in cities. They no longer make a living in the ways that their ancestors did. All right, let's go ahead and look at languages. The diverse people of southern and eastern Africa speak many different languages. Most belong to the Bantu language family. English is spoken as a second language in countries that were once part of the British Empire. In South Africa, Afrikaans is widely spoken. It comes from the Dutch spoken by early colonists. Arab influence is widespread throughout the region. Arabic is spoken in Sudan. It also helped create the Swahili language. Swahili is a Bantu language. It is unique because it has many Arabic elements and words from other languages. For example, when you count from 1 to 10 in Swahili, 3 of the numbers come from Arabic, while 7 are Bantu. Swahili developed because of the trade between Eastern Africa and Arab countries. It is now used as a common language throughout much of Eastern Africa. So if you guys look up closely here at the map, okay, this yellowish region are all the countries that speak Swahili. Okay, so Mozambique, Malawi, Zambia, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Kenya, okay, and actually other places speak it as well too. It's a very common language throughout Africa. All right, let's look at our last section, religion. Many people in southern and eastern Africa practice indigenous African religions. Others practice Islam or Christianity. Some mix their indigenous religions with one or the other. Christianity is the strongest in the southern part of the region. Islam is mostly practiced in the northern parts of the region. Although Islamic countries surround Ethiopia, it has been a center for Christianity for many centuries. So if you guys look here at this little chart, it breaks down the religions for you. 60% of the people in in Eastern and Southern Africa are Christian, 24% are Islamic, 14% are indigenous, and 2% are other. Okay? All right, so that's all of the reading. Let's go ahead and scroll back up and move over to our questions. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and read through the questions for you, and then you guys can answer them on your own, either on this document or you can answer them on a sheet of paper. All right. So what are our questions? 1, describe the Great Rift Valley in 2 or more sentences. 2, what is the most common type of climate in South and Eastern Africa? 3, what are the similarities and differences of agriculture in Southern Africa and Sudan? 4, how does disease affect people in Southern and Eastern Africa? 5, which languages are spoken in Southern and Eastern Africa? And 6, which religion is the most common in Southern and Eastern Africa? You'll have to use that chart for that one. All right, guys, that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.